Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today I have with me an old friend, Michael Pantile, to help me defend our mutual Christian masculinism brother, Will Noland, who recently came under fire for saying the truth on Catholic sexual realities and Catholic sexual ethics within marriage. So he's gonna be with me here today. What's up, Mike? Or you're gonna be with me here today? I guess I'm addressing you. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you doing? We got to attack the Spurs. We got to fight back.
Yeah. So today we're going at, because we haven't been doing CMASC lately. We'll come back to it, but our schedules kind of changed, which made Fridays sort of hard. You and I do a weekly podcast together with our friend Will Noland across the pond. I guess it's a tri-national podcast, an American patriarch with a Canadian patriarch and an English patriarch. That's Will, who we're kind of maybe the dawns of Catholic patriarchy, and that's what the Christian masculinism podcast is all about. We do that on Fridays. We haven't been doing it the last couple of months because our schedules changed. Okay. So Will did a tweet. I don't want to bring up the tweet first thing, because what I want to do is it's on sex, and Catholics are weird on sex. And that's not just something that Hollywood Jews or secular Jews or Protestants say. It's actually true. And a lot of the weirdness comes from Puritan converts to the faith who are always seeking to justify, rationalize, retrofit. Why did you fall for idiotic Protestantism for so long? Now that's my private view, but we're doing this show to defend a really, really common sense kind of have lots of sex with your wife, have lots of babies and have lots of sex with your wife for the second end of marriage, which is the good of the spouses tweet that Will did. And I don't know if you just want to, rather than pull up the tweet, I don't want to spend too long on it. I would jump right into history, but you saw the response that it garnered on Catholic Twitter, and Catholic Twitter is a weird place because there's a bunch of know-nothings and low IQs, and their leaders tend to be midwits who are just telling them untruths about sex. I don't know what that sound is, by the way.
Sorry, I'll try to figure it out.
So I don't know. Respond to what you saw the responses being.
Well, initially I saw Will's tweet and I said, yeah, this makes sense. This is a good remedy, preventative, not a catch-all cure, which if we know Will, you consume his content, we know that to be true. If you've got half of a brain and you can, think about these things with any kind of depth, what he was saying and what he was not saying. And then you just see this absolute, on one hand, puritanical spiral. And on the other hand, the crypto feminism man hatred that obviously all of a sudden all the women come out that shouldn't even be on Twitter having these types of conversations start to spurg out and project their feminism. And then you have these other guys over here speaking as if you're not, there's one comment in the chat that was so apt. If you don't go about sex like you're methodically baking a cake, then you're somehow in mortal sin. If that's the case, bro, then we're all screwed completely.
No pun intended. Yeah, there's always these days in post-Catholic Twitter, post-Catholic YouTube, the last 10 to 20 years, there's a perennial mésalliance between the Catholic touch-me-not, borderline feminist women, the touch-me-not types, that, if you don't think that sex is an affirmative good, then you probably should have just become a nun. But so there's always a mésalliance between them and then Catholic Puritan men who tend to be converts from Protestantism, which is really odd. And then there's a third party in that sick menage that also joins up for a mésalliance that tends to be the white knighting Catholic feminist men who are just kind of horny losers who are trying to get the attention of women, and that's always something they've failed to do. So they start parroting tidbits of feminism. Okay, what I thought I would do today is before I read what Will's tweet was, I want to go through the Catholic teaching on marital sex and where this idea is relatively skeletal. It's a bare bones teaching, and there wasn't anything definitive on it until very lately. And it's what we call the three fonts. Really, it's the two fonts, because the first font is you got to be married to have sex, right? I mean, that's one of them, but no one's really debating that. They debate the other two fonts of procreativity and unitivity. Did you want to just say something on that? I think you'll be surprised at how definitive this teaching is, but also how lately it came along. Do you just, I don't know if
continue. I want to hear this all before I comment. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it's better to get the whole picture. Yeah.
Tim, sorry. Before you do that, will you unplug and replug your mic? Maybe we can get rid of that noise. It's a button on the top, or I can do it for you. And there. Yeah.
All right. Is that better?
No. Sorry.
That might be coming from Mike's end. So if it's not devastating, I'd rather just go on.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I know spurgs are always going to spurg about something. And if it's not, you have to put a bag over your wife's head and, count to 20 as you do the marital act. And think of the least sexy thoughts ever. I had a weird spurgette telling me she tries to be as unsexy as possible. In all contexts. I was like, well, what about the context of marital sex? You want to be unsexy there? It's appropriate to be. But if spurgs aren't spurging about that, they'll spurg about something asexual, like there's a little tweet in the the 1 decibel tweet in the background of our audio, which is weird because they evidently never listened to AM radio, which had horrible sound quality. And I listened to a bunch, so I'm like, you guys can just get glad in the same pants you got mad in. Anyway, let's go through this history of really the 3 marital fonts. And I would first say this, okay, Mike, you saw some of I debated Jay Dyer, Eastern Orthodox, twice this summer, both times in the Northeast or in the East, and one at the beginning of the summer, one at the end. And one thing that Eastern Orthodox will always do, that all Catholics will cheer for me when I defend against, is Eastern Orthodox will bitch about the fact that there was no definitive Catholic teaching on the papacy until like almost the year 1900, until Vatican I, right, which is 1870s. Yeah, that's kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, can we agree on that? Oh, it's funny that the Catholic Church went 1870 years before giving a definitive teaching on the papacy, right?
And that's what I loved about your stuff with Elijah Yassi on the point of papal minimalism. Now, I'm not nearly as way above my pay grade to even touch that topic, but yeah, no, complete the thought.
Yeah. So every Catholic that I saw in the comments was like, yeah, that it might be counterintuitive that the church didn't like weigh in on the papacy at the Council of Nicaea, First Ecumenical Council, but they didn't. And even Eastern Orthodox accepted that the church chose to proceed for that first 1,000 years with really zero definitive teachings on the papacy. And then about halfway through the history of Christendom, we had the Great Schism, where after 1,000 years, the Orthodox decided that this rich concept of the papacy was too rich for them. And so they broke off, even though they'd accepted the papacy for 1,000 years. And the last 1,000 years, they've just been broken off. And we didn't even have a definitive statement on the papacy at like the reunion councils of Florence or Council 8 or Council 9 or anything that you'd expect around the time that these hopefully blessed schismatics chose to break off. But it was it was only after 800 years plus the schism in 1054 plus about 800 years that that the church deigned to give us a definitive teaching on what the papacy is. And everyone said, oh yeah, deal with it. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's counterintuitive, but the church doesn't always give dogmatic definitions or dogmatic rules of definition until later than maybe we prefer. Well, that is the precise stinking case with what is the teaching on marital sexuality. Let me get into the history, and you say anything if you want to jump in here, but I would just offer this last thought. Evidence of absence is not absence of evidence, but when the church deigns against giving precising definitions, it's for a reason. So the church was always like, look, we're teaching clearly in the first millennium, first 100 years, you have to be married to have sex. That was always a rule. But so there was always that one of the three fonts. You got to be married to have sex. But they go so long without any sort of clear guidelines on what's allowed and what's not allowed in married sex, or what even the motivations for married sex have to be, until definitively the 20th century, when you get three important papal documents. They wait till 1930, Casti Connubii, 1968, Humanae Vitae, and 1981, Familiaris Consortio. These are the first three really important papal documents on married sex. That's because what's not specifically being proscribed is being mitigated in importance. I mean, maybe there's venial sins here and there, but this is not an important thing if the church is not deigning to speak on it. There's a prefigurement of these three papal teachings at the Catechism of the Council of Trent. I'll mention that, but it doesn't say what the Puritans think it's going to say. So let me just jump into it, unless you have any sort of prefigurative thoughts of your own, Mike.
No, go ahead.
Just with that clarifying thought that it's the 20th century, kind of like it's the late 19th century, to which the church haltingly deigns to not give guidance until very, very late in, the 11th hour. Okay. So what happened in 1930, and I did a tweet on this recently, is you might know or you might not know, every single person for 1,930 years who called himself a Christian had always condemned and deplored contraception, artificial contraception. At 1900, then 1910, then 1920, there was an attempt by worldwide secular people, probably Jews, to normalize artificial contraception. Every 10 years they'd get together, and they were unsuccessful. In 1930, at this gathering called the Anglican Lambeth Conference, they became successful. They won over getting most Protestants to suddenly accept contraception, and some of the Eastern Orthodox churches. So this hogwash that the Orthodox are the ones that don't ever change is nonsense. The only ones who held the line on Catholic artificial contraception / sexuality after the 1930 Anglican Lambeth Conference was the Roman Catholic Church, of course. We hold the line on everything. We're the ones that don't change. So literally every other, there are some Eastern Orthodox churches that are against it, but the rule by and large is the internal forum. It's sort of up to individual bishops. They really used the synodal way, which is what Francis was trying to do unsuccessfully, to get in contraception. So this isn't a contraception show, but what happens in late 1930, which proves what a baller the Roman Catholic Church is. The Protestants completely sell out and become coomery, contraception-loving perverts, most of them, almost all of them, and a bunch of the Eastern Orthodox churches allow it too. Well, in late 1930, not only do we hold the line, but you get Casti Connubii, which is considered to have some/much dogma, sort of Pope-made dogma in it. And so in Casti Connubii, there's a first introduction of the two inseparable purposes of marital sex. So as we, the Catholic Church, are being the sticklers on no artificial contraception, and we're holding out from earlier in the year, there's this big modernist conference where all the other Christians in the world became sellouts to contraception. So we're sticklers. But in that same document, a couple other things happen that are more relevant for today's show, because today's show is not about contraception. I'm just reminding everyone we're the sex sticklers on the things that matter. But Casti Connubii in 1930, at the end of the year, as we're being sticklers on contraception, says, look, there's a threefold requirement for sex, which is the main thing that the church is ever going to teach on it. And it's sort of prefigured here, and it's going to get more developed throughout the 20th century. Got to be marital, unitive, procreative. And it introduces the latter of these two fonts as two inseparable purposes. This is kind of the first, and the two inseparable purposes are procreation and then good of the spouses. So this is not some Johnny-come-lately modernist doctrine of liberal squishiness. This is 1930 Casti Connubii holding the line on condoms and other forms of artificial contraception. But it's saying, Pope Pius is saying, you know, there's this threefold requirement. It's kind of bare bones as long as the marriage is, as long as the sex is marital, and basically you're not using artificial contraception, and it's unitive, whatever that means, you're bringing the two spouses together, then it's pretty much good. Now, Will's tweet, which we'll get to in a little bit, was playing on this as a thing, an act within action theory can have two primary ends or a primary end plus a close second sort of primary end. We'll get to that in a bit. Let's jump forward next to Humanae Vitae, a 1968 papal document that is the definitive magisterial formulation of the threefold requirement for what sex must be. This is the only church teaching that's definitive on marital sex. And Humanae Vitae, again, Mike, comment on this, is the second hold the line document 38 years after Casti Connubii, after the Lambeth Conference. Again, a stickler document, not a liberal document, holding the line on what? Contraception. So Humanae Vitae, 1968, by liberal Paul VI, everyone thought, the liberals thought he was going to allow contraception 38 years after Casti Connubii disallowed it after the Lambeth Conference. You see, this is all the context of stickleriness, and Catholics being the ones that will not change our moral philosophy. Humanae Vitae comes out, and liberal Paul VI says, no, you can't use contraception. Casti Connubii got it right. So this is not a liberal document. But here, like, it's almost an exact formulation / doubling down of Casti Connubii 38 years before. People expected the church to capitulate on contraception. It didn't. But then as a second moment, it now defines in a dogmatic or dogmatic parallel way, there are these threefold requirements for what sex must be to be illicit. Must be marital, must be open to the powers of procreation. That just means you can't be blocking it. That's just the no condoms, no artificial contraception. It has to be open to life. That doesn't mean they're telling you what day or what time of the day you have to have sex. It just means you can have sex any day, any time of the day with your spouse. It just means you can't be blocking it chemically or physically. And then it must be unitive, and that there are these two purposes. There's procreativity and there's this unitive purpose. That makes it definitive. So both Casti Connubii and Humanae Vitae, before you get into the really squishy personalism of John Paul II, who's coming next with that third document in the history, he will personalize Casti Connubii and Humanae Vitae with his squishy language of personalism. But he's going to get to it in the 1980s. But he's not the one that made this up. Okay. Did you want to comment on that before I get to John Paul II?
Yeah, real quick. I suppose the tension is held between, so we understand it's marital. You cannot frustrate the end. So procreation. Well, how does the church define unitive? Because I think there's this tension. People are talking at each other between the commentary of, let's say, St. Thomas on 1 Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians, and the Augustinian view that unless you're at risk of burning, meaning falling into fornication, sexual sin, then this is the lesser of the two evils. So thus you should engage in this for the pleasure alone, because it is the lesser of the two evils. And I think that's what people are getting hung up on. Well, I think a lot of trads, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So they're engaged in a false dichotomy, because they're all so all the private theologians, and I mean, look, I'm a Thomist in a doctoral program for Thomistic philosophy, but what was not acknowledged. Now, I want to rush through the history. I was going through it slowly at first, but I want to get through Familius Consortio, and then I want to go back in time to the Catechism of Trent, because it's going to surprise people. The false dichotomy by the private theologians of the first 1,500 years, even after that, is there wasn't much explicit acknowledgement of the second primary telos of sex. So because they only thought the one primary purpose is procreation, they didn't realize that there's this purpose of good of the spouses. They assumed if it wasn't procreative, then there's some sort of the only possible motivant for the sexual act could be pleasure, pure pleasure alone. And anytime you do anything, having an extra bite of food when your hunger is satisfied is a venial sin. Anytime you do anything for pure pleasure alone, it's at least a venial sin. That's what leads them into this fallacy. But what they're not understanding is that the Catechism of Trent first formulates that the idea of the private good of the spouse is namely mutual. It says mutual help and the remedy for concupiscence. But mutual help is the first formulation that I could find of this unitive idea. Catechism of Trent, 1566. And there'd been no church formulation. There were just sort of private theologians writing about sex in this very ancient way. The church had never accepted that, had never, written. It's like limbo or something. The church there's no formal dogma on limbo. So it's guys saying stuff that wasn't accepted by the church. Now, the only thing accepted by the church is casti connubii, which formalizes the teaching. You're a schismatic. You're like one of these trads that doesn't accept Vatican II. If you're not accepting casti connubii, which is an odd thing for a trad not to accept because it's a hardline document, or Humanae Vitae, it's a Paul VI document, but it was seen as a hardline document. You're not at liberty not to accept these documents. These are the papal teachings. Now, Familiaris Consortio comes along in 1981, and it redefines the threefold requirement of marital sex. But, and it does so in really soft, personalizing, phenomenological JP2 language, but it takes casti connubii and Humanae Vitae, and it's saying that you have to have these inseparable purposes of it's got to be open to the procreative powers. That means you're not blocking. All it means is you're not contracepting chemically or physically. So the act has to be open to the powers of conception, which was stipulated in both casti and Humanae Vitae. That doesn't mean that it guides what's called a virtual intent. It doesn't mean you have to be hoping to get your wife pregnant every time, right? It doesn't mean you can't, have sex on non-ovulation days, okay? And this is before JP2. And then he says that really every act has to have this inseparable goal of being unitive and procreative. This would also, by the way, condemn someone that's, and I'm not saying this is my view or something, but if you're just trying to procreate and you're not even trying to be unitive with your spouse, which is theoretically, I guess, possible, but it's probably practically inseparable, then that would be wrong. So you have these two primary ends or competing primary ends for what the motivant, for the licit good motivant for Catholic marital sex may be. And you always have these three fonts, and they are the only Catholic teaching on it. So you're not at liberty as a Catholic to say, no, I don't accept this teaching of casti connubii, Humanae Vitae, Familiaris Consortio. You're not free to do it. But for those people for whom I guess even Pope Pius in 1930 with casti connubii, who's shutting down the idea of contraception, well, if he's a modernist for accepting that sex needs to be unitive and procreative and that there are two primary ends, or at least a kind of a primary secondary end of the good of the spouses, well, look at the Catechism of Trent in 1566. It acknowledged, and this is not magisterial, it's just catechetical, the chief end is procreation, and there's a chief secondary end that's more than just prefigurative of the three fonts that are mutual help and remedy for concupiscence. So separate secondary ends that are basically, it's approximate language, but approximating. You can have multiple primary ends. I'll show this as a Thomist, a philosophical precept in a second. You can't have multiple primary ends, teloses. But it says mutual help and remedy for concupiscence are also ends of the act, meaning final causes. Okay, so that's the Catechism of Trent. For those people that I think, what kind of sedevacantist would you have to be to not accept casti connubii? That's Pius XI. You know, we're developing newer and newer and newer types of sedevacantist, because these Puritan weirdos that want sex to have to be something utterly unnatural and non-unitive and for the good of the spouses and not about developing a better relationship and having a really healthy sex life, which a bunch of the touch-me-nots who are maybe overweight or feminist, or the weird Puritans who became Catholic but not sexually speaking, or just the weird infiltrators that want to subvert the faith, whatever that weird mesalliance was. They're trying to make sex into something that it's not, or maybe that it was for Puritans. And the Catechism of Trent prefigures this threefold purpose, okay? So you're not at liberty to deny casti connubii, but even if you did and you're a sede before 1930, and you don't accept what casti connubii says about there's two inseparable purposes, which everyone always blames on JP2. All the people that are Catholic sexual Puritans, they blame it on JP2, but this is Pius XI in 1930. It's Humanae Vitae in 1968. These are not liberal documents, and it's prefigured there in the Catechism of Trent. I don't know if you want to comment there, because I also want to comment on, you have those three papal documents I read you, and then there's three catechetical and ecumenical council histories. The Catechism of Trent. I also want to talk about the modern catechism and Vatican II document, Gaudium et Spes, which doubles, triples, quadruples down on the fact that unitivity is one of the viable ends.
Well, then I wonder, is the argument what drives the motivation for the movement of that appetite or the will in that direction? So call it the unitive way. Let's define what does the church say about that? Are these guys spurging out over, or the women, let's just say, it being motivated by pure insatiable lust, and the guy has this pornographic habit, or this tendency toward lust, and that using it as this way to quell, so that, I guess, that being the motivator of the appetite versus it being, I'm attracted to my wife and I want to engage in this. Because if you take that puritanical approach, then even engaging in it for the pleasure, even keeping the primary end in mind, despite that not being the primary motivator, that being at least venially sinful, which I can't square in my head, really. So is it what motivates the movement of the appetite toward the act, right? That kind of, I guess, cancels out the unitive way. Has the church definitively spoken on that? Like the actual motivator behind the act itself?
Well, let me, for one thing, this is, when we're talking about what moves, what animates the will toward a telos, it's not like a precise science. We don't know. I wasn't going to do this yet, but let's give an analogy, okay? First off, to show that there can be competing primary teloses of a given thing, and that there are licit secondary or tertiary or quaternary teloses, ends, purposes that are licit. They only become illicit when they frustrate the purpose of the primary ones. Let's give an example. Okay, human lips. So human beings are defined by two things, right? We have a genus and a species. We have a specific difference. It's rational animality. The human lips have, as far as I can tell, concomitant primary purposes. One is animal, one is rational. They go along with our rational animality. One is eating, like your dog has lips. All my Siberian Huskies growing up had black lips. A lot of dogs, I think, have black lips. That's because lips aid in eating, the consumption of food, right? That's a primary purpose. Human lips also aid in the formulation of speech. So that corresponds with our rational animality. So I don't know how to say, because unlike all the other animals, we're rational and we're risible and we are linguistic. Our lips do a second primary thing. So in the first case, I would just say the existence of human lips prove that there can be two primary, or maybe more than two primary final causes or teloses or purposes or ends in a given a given thing. Okay, lips. So have we established that? Because I couldn't say, and I don't think you have to say.
Can you explain real quick, because I think some people are confused, why this matters in context of the married sexual ethics?
Because the Puritans deny that married sex can have multiple ends. That they always say, what they say they've created using non-Catholic teaching. They've made up out of whole cloth the idea that procreation is the only acceptable end of sex. And not only the procreative, they're talking about intentionalism. You have to be trying for a baby every time you have sex. They're not even talking about the procreative powers and the lack of contraception. It's got to be open to life, because that's correct. But they're saying it's the only primary end, which they just made up, even though Council of Trent is saying 500 years ago, even then, the moral theology was young. But even the Council of Trent, Catechism of the Council of Trent, is acknowledging that there is another viable end of sex, purpose, telos, whatever, final cause, reason God gave it to us. Everything has a final cause, right? Sex has at least two good, well-ordered final causes. The good of the spouses, which sub-includes, so they don't burn, so they're not suffering concupiscence, but also the good of the spouses to bring them together, because your relationship is better if you have a good sex life, which is the main thing that these Catholic Puritans deny. And then, of course, procreation. But so I'm bringing up the lips because I'm showing there can be two primary causes, but this isn't the most important part of the analogy. Let me get to...
Somebody in chat was questioning that. He says, yeah, but lips aren't really for eating. I don't think that holds up. That's actually not true, biologically speaking. Lips actually help control food and keep liquid inside your mouth.
Right, precisely. They contain the food.
It's,
all right,
it's essential for swallowing. So that's not correct. Lips are for eating.
Yeah, I mean, just stop. Okay, it's for the process of gustation. Hey, dummies, don't get lost in the fucking analogy, okay? Don't be a dummy. I don't care if it's for the intake of food or for keeping food from spilling out your mouth. Just, come on, stay with us, dummies. All right, come on, man. It's for gustation, which is animal, and the point is, it's got a second primary, non-competing, concomitant primary purpose. This is hard to do. Don't be a gadfly. Don't be an annoying little punk. Okay. The second thing is speech. It definitely helps to formulate words. Go watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, the way their lips move, right? Yeah. It's not just your tongue, it's also your lips. Okay? They're both primary for a human being. They're not primary we're talking about human beings. They're not primary for animals. Same thing with sex. Okay? Sex, it has only one cause for animality. One final cause. It's just to procreate. It's not for the good of the horse couple, right? They don't have marriage. It's not for their private good. It's not for the private psychological good or the psychological good of them as a couple, joint and several. But with people with a rational soul, with animals with a rational soul, there can be a second primary cause. And it's acknowledged in official Catholic teaching in Catechism of Trent, Casti Connubii, Humanae Vitae, Familiaris Consortio, aka the only teachings the church has ever made. I'm going to get to Gaudium et Spes in a second. But so, all right, keep with us, ADD boy, stay with us. So what we're doing here is now we're showing that, so those are the primary causes of the thing, of lips or of sex or of anything. Any res has primary causes, primary purposes, final causes, really. But there are licit, allowed secondary and tertiary causes. And again, for all the people that want to spurg out and sort of strip the metaphor of its explanatory power, here's what I'm saying. What else are you allowed to do with your lips, guy? Blow bubbles, whistle a tune. I don't know. They help you if you're at a party and you're trying to tie a maraschino cherry stem in your mouth, right? Is that a mortal sin?
Party tricks?
Party tricks? No, those are licit, secondary and tertiary teloi, ends, final causes of your lips, right? Unless you think whistling a tune is a mortal sin, They are licit. What makes them licit? The fact that the human lips, when you're whistling, are not frustrating or contradicting the primary end, speaking or eating. And just the fact that there's an opportunity cost, a temporal opportunity cost, in the fact that while you're whistling, you can't eat or speak at the same time. That doesn't count as frustrating the primary purpose. Same thing when we get back to talking about what the primary cause or causes of human sex are from a final point of view, from a telos point of view. Teleology, why do we have them? What's the purpose? Does this make sense, Mike?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I mean, this is answering all the questions that I had. Because, I mean, if you take that to its most extreme, chewing gum frustrates the gut. So are we saying that chewing gum, for what it does with regards to the gastrointestinal system, is sinful because it frustrates the primary end of the gastro system?
When we say frustrates, we mean conceptually. It might give you a little bit of stomach upset. Steph is chewing a lot of gum these days to avoid some nausea. So it actually helps her if it's mint gum. So we don't mild frustration. We mean conceptual frustration, where the telos is squarely opposed. That the telos of licit purpose A is squarely opposed to the telos of illicit purpose A prime. So it's a conceptual distinction, not some practical logistical thing like, oh, one time I chewed gum. Gum always makes me mildly queasy, but that's not what we mean. We mean frustrating the purpose of. So here's where we're really coming to it. The only way that a given act of sex, and I'm having Christian Wagner on the show because he's really come around on this. He criticized me and Will harshly a couple years ago, and he's like, whoa, my views become a lot closer to your guys. Me and Will were right. You're not going to catch us out on this stuff about the acts leading to sex, aka foreplay. The only way that a given act of intercourse in marriage can frustrate the purpose of sex qua sex would be through contraception. Or if there's any kind of pollution, especially on the male end, pollution means terminal acts of foreplay. But that's not what I was going to cover today. Terminal acts of foreplay versus non-terminal acts of foreplay, which are most of the moral theologians agree are illicit. The only way to frustrate the purpose is that you literally don't have that you actually destroy the procreative purpose by a terminal act of foreplay or an act of contraception. Is that clear? So it's a conceptual thing. We're not using frustration in some other way.
Are you going to go over that? I'm sorry. Are you going to go over that for locals, by the way?
Yeah, we'll prefigure that. Christian Wagner's coming on the show, I think, next week, and we're going to have a big dialogue because that was a ground of beef. Christian came in from Protestantism and was one of these guys that's really spoken hard, really taken a hard line on marital sex. And he texted me yesterday. He's like, yeah, my view is much closer to yours than it used to be. So anyway. So does that clarify that as you are, not only is there a second primary cause on the books in Catholic teaching, which is very scant, of sex, what's allowed to motivate. So all this idea of like, are you too randy? Are you too lustful? Well, it's not, for one thing, it's not lust if it's for your spouse and it's ordered toward an eventual act of marital procreative unitive sex, meaning you have sex and it finishes up, it terminates in the right place. I'm not trying to be gross here. I'm trying to be ungross. Anything that aids that, we'll get to foreplay next week, but foreplay aids that. And there's scientific data that shows it. As long as you are not contradicting the purpose, then there are secondary and tertiary causes. But from the start, there are two primary causes. It's the good of the spouses and the good of the relationship and procreation. And so you can tend more to one. Sometimes if you're just trying to have it, oh man, we're getting old, we need to have another kid. That might be your main intended goal or your virtual intent of that sex, but you're still being unitive, right? You still want, this will be fun. It'll be good for us. It'll bring us together. We want to grow our family. But other times when you're, just had a kid, you might be focusing more on the virtual intent of unitivity, and you're like, we're gonna not block the generative powers, meaning we're checking that box for this is procreative. We're checking that box of 3. We're married. Check it. All these trads need to check their pants for the private parts every day. It feels like yeah, it's still there. Okay, so and they need to check every time they have sex. Nothing's natural. Buck Owens, where I come from in Bakersfield, said "act natural." These people don't get it. They listen to that song "Act Natural." They're like, "What does he mean?" I mean, natural romance between you and the person that you've sort of consecrated your life to, your spouse. You're married. Do they have to check that every day? Okay, is it procreative? Are you using contraception, or are you polluting? Are you having terminal acts of foreplay, particularly on the male part, especially on the male part? We can talk about the female part later. That's where it gets complicated. But no, okay, if you're not using did you accidentally fasten a condom without knowing it? And did you accidentally terminate without noticing it when you're, kissing or whatever, getting ready? No. Okay, you're good. Check that second box. And then is it unitive? Well, is everybody having a nice time and getting closer? Okay, boom. That's all the church has given us. So I will just say that we have an ecumenical document on it. One of the sacred constitutions of Vatican II, 1965. Again, we make fun of sedes, but I know I want to get you in here, Mike, for this. But Gaudium et Spes says, by its very nature, the institution of marriage is ordered to the procreation and education of offspring and to the good of the spouses. This love is uniquely expressed and perfected through the acts proper to marriage. So you can't not accept this. You're a sede. What do you say?
I think a lot of people are still getting this twist, and I think a lot of these guys probably have too heavy a scruple on their mind when they're saying, well, how can something have a dual primary end? I mean, we just gave the example of lips and eating and talking. I don't know how much more could you make that example more clear? I don't think you can make that more clear, because in that comparative, that makes the most sense, because you took this all the way to its extreme too. It's like, well, if you're craving food simply for the pleasure of eating the food, it's still nourishing the body in some way, so long as you're not a glutton. That is somehow putting second things first and first things second, or is that a dual primary end? It's like both pleasurable and primarily doesn't frustrate the primary aspect of actually supplying nutrition to the food. I mean, this, even as a scrupulous guy that I am, that makes perfect sense.
There's a comment in chat basically backing up exactly what Mike says, and the comment is, it seems obvious that objects or body parts are meant to do more than one primary thing, but I'm too dumb to see how an act itself can have dual primary ends.
Well, you have to understand. Well, I don't understand how you could get one but not the other, right? Given that or system organs and systems of organelles are strictly ergonomic / functional. So the organs themselves are oriented only towards functions and functioning systems. So I don't get how you're not getting that. Like Mike came up with a great analogy. Take it out of the Puritans think there's something really, really sui generis about the reproductive system, and they're really not. Let's take it to your analogy, Mike, the gustatory system. It's this guy is asking, how can you have the primary end of when you're starved? After I finish these, I usually do these streams around lunch. The thing motivating me is that I'm hungry. Okay. So it's not a chronological ordering of two things. I'm hungry and I want to stop feeling hunger. That's like motivant one. Number two, my organs need whatever nutrients they need. That's number two. And they're related and they're inseparable. But I'm not sitting there going, I want to nourish my organs. I'm being motivated by like, man, my stomach's hurting and I'm really hungry. Like a Chick-fil-A grilled sandwich sounds really good. I get Chick-fil-A chicken probably too often, but I usually get the grilled. So get off my case, Trads. Okay. So, but it's like you're saying you don't get how enjoying your food, which is a licit end itself, I want that enjoyment and I want that good that it does for me, cannot be simultaneous to it being good for your system of organs. I mean, do Can you make this clear, Mike? I don't know how to make it any clearer.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. I'm motivated by exercise because of obviously the physical effects, but also the physiological effects, and I also enjoy the act itself. So like, what part of that is disordered if they all kind of point toward it? Doesn't frustrate the primary end of making me healthier, and secondarily, I enjoy it. It makes me feel good, and I'm partially motivated by it making me feel good. I suppose the issue here really is a lack of temperance. So like, don't be a glutton. Don't be somebody that lusts. Don't be somebody that hasn't had these things subordinated to right reasons. So if all you wanted to do is sleep with your wife all day, all night long, and you have no control of that, that's probably in itself a sign of a greater problem. But the act itself isn't.
Okay, so I think I see. I hadn't planned on going here, but it's books 1 and 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics. Aristotle talks that trads really don't understand, and this makes a lot more sense. I'm just getting it now. This isn't what I'd planned, so I'll try to do this fast. So Aristotle says 90% of people, 95% of people lead an apollastic life, and they mistake the good life, the life of eudaimonia, a moral good, a moral happiness. They think the object of the good life is pleasure alone. Then most men lead lives of fit for cattle, is a direct quote from the book 1 and book 2 of the Ethics, where he's saying it's an apollastic life where you think the highest good, the good behind all the other goods, which is really eudaimonia, is just pleasure. He says that's wrong. But he doesn't say pleasure itself is wrong. Then he says, well, there's a higher sort of person that thinks the political end of life, which makes honor the highest good, the good behind all the other goods. Why do you study in school? To get A's. Why do you try to get A's? So that you can get a good GPA. Why do you try to get a good GPA? So that you can get into a good college. Why do you try to get into a good college? So that you can buy a big house. Why do you go buy a big house? What's the good behind all those goods? The Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. It's eudaimonia, a moral kind of happiness, not a pleasure, but a moral happiness. That's what the true man says. But then, common men, apollastic life, think pleasure is just the purpose of it all. Higher sorts that are still getting it wrong think honor is good. Being esteemed by other decent men. That's a better answer than just pleasure, but it's still not the answer. The only true answer is eudaimonia. That's the good behind all the other goods. Now, Aristotle, because he says we're not Confucians. We don't say pleasure is bad. We don't say the body is bad. Who are you really? Your body and your soul. So bodily pleasures are never condemned by Aristotle or the Aristotelian Christians, the Catholics, or the Aristotelian Christians, body and soul. We're not body haters. That's Plato. That's a lot of Protestants. That's a lot of Eastern philosophy, where they think, oh, you can have a great life and have a splitting headache all the time. No, Aristotle's like, you need to not have a splitting headache all the time. You need a modicum of health, a modicum of wealth, but the main part is leading a moral life. Everything in balance. But what Aristotle says that's most key in book 2 of the Ethics is that pleasure is necessary as the test for when you do a virtue. When you do a virtue, like when you give to the poor, do you get pleasure as a result? That's a truly liberal man, a truly giving man. If you give to the poor and you don't get pleasure from doing it, you're like, I wish I had that $20 back. Then you did a liberal act, a virtuous act, but you did it in a continent way. So pleasure is the test. So that proves it right there. Pleasure will motivate your actions. So will doing the right thing for its own sake. Okay, and that's relevant here. Gaudium et Spes, by the way, also says the acts in marriage are noble and worthy, for they signify and promote that mutual self-giving by which they enrich each other with a joyful and thankful will. This is the movement from the ancient theologians who made sex seem like, get it over with, it's dirty, it's bad. They had this weird ancient view that sex is dirty and bad, the early Christians. It's not. It's noble and worthy. And I'll say this last thing, I know you want to get in here. Even then, that's going to be repeated in the Catechism of 92, which says the acts of sex, this is CCC 2362, acts of sex are noble and honorable. Gaudium et Spes in 1965 says noble and worthy. 2362 in the modern catechism says, as long as you mark these 3 boxes, check these 3 boxes, unitive, procreative, marital, they're noble and honorable. They're good. They're not morally neutral. and they're not a little bit bad. The way these Puritans think, they're noble and honorable. That's if you're a Catholic and you're not a sedevacantist. Sorry, Mike, you wanted to say.
No, don't be sorry. So to circle this back, that's all great. I mean, it's cleared up so much for me, and I'm sure many people in the audience. Now, circling this back to the original tweet Will made, I think a lot of people are up in arms also because there's this that he's maybe creating this point, which I know he isn't, that it's tying the porn obsession to a lack of sex. And that if there was just more sex, that it would somehow cure this porn obsession. So we kind of understand now the morality and the telos, so to speak, primary and the dual primary ends of sex. Then I'm curious to hear how you would go about that argument, because people are like, hey, having lots of sex with your wife isn't the cure for a porn obsession, or if a man who's porn obsessed, it's typically because of a lack of sex. I think that's at least part of the reason a lot of people are upset by that. What do you say, Tim?
That original post by Will?
Yeah, could you pull it on the screen,
It's on
please?
the screen right now. So Will posted this, Will Noland, at Be Her Leader on Twitter. He said, quote, "Wives are God's main weapon against porn addiction in men and need to be reminded of the dignity of that role. A thriving sex life is a tremendous spiritual help to a husband."
Okay. So could you get up where I 1 Corinthians, I tweeted that out. Now, a weapon against something can either be a priori or a posteriori, right? Mm-hmm. So you can either have a weapon against cancer by getting antioxidants and avoiding cancer. It says, two hypochondriacs having a conversation, of course, here, and Tim Gordon and Mike Pentilli. You can either avoid cancer, right? A weapon against cancer. No one freaks out because you say, eating superfoods, eating a lot of cherries and berries is a weapon against cancer, because a priori, before you get it, it's a weapon against it, which is how Will intended this tweet. Mm-hmm. Or there's a posteriori. A lot of the same things effectuate the same good if you get cancer. Sometimes it's a different thing that's a weapon against it once you actually have it. Sometimes it's the same means is a weapon against it once you have it. It doesn't really matter, because we can use this expression equivocally. We can say such and thus is a weapon against such and thus, either in the sense that it means before we get it so that we won't get it, or after we get it so that we diminish it. Will clearly, to anyone who's not a tard out there, that anyone that's not going to freak out about me saying lips are for eating or whatever that guy said. For anyone that gets stuff and is trying not to get it, they're like, yeah, oh, I see. Will's tweet. Would you reread Will's tweet, Steph, please?
Oh, sorry. I got it off the screen. I don't know.
I'm just bothered I'm not a grouchy guy and I'm not a short-tempered guy. I'm really bothered by people trying not to get things, because it's the worst form of tendentiousness.
Or trying. It's a very female quality to read something and then take the exception for the rule.
Right.
Just be like, but not all water is wet. That's what's happening. Instead of, I read that tweet and I was like, that's exactly right.
Well, I'll show you a bunch of studies that show Will's right. Not only is Will right, because Will is a Catholic. So all the Catholics out there that condemned him were denying Casti Connubii, Humanae Vitae, Familiaris Consortio, the Catechism of Trent, Gaudium et Spes. The modern Catechism 92, which says in number 2363, now it's rubber stamped. There's this twofold end of marriage in 2363, CCC 2363. Good of the spouses and procreation. Good of the spouses includes not being tempted to burn. Number 2362, acts are noble and honorable, as long as they check these three boxes. Even if you're not trying for a baby each time, as long as you're not blocking little sperm half babies from joining with eggs, then you're good. Number 2369 repeats the language. It has a unitive primary purpose and a procreative primary purpose. You don't have to be tending to the same purpose in the same way at the same time. They just both have to be open. Now, we gave you the analogy of lips, which I'll wait here. Anybody who thinks that there cannot be two primary purposes, eating and speaking, I'll wait. Anyone who thinks there cannot be secondary, tertiary, quaternary viable purposes that are non-sinful, what about whistling or blowing bubbles or tying cherry stems or whatever? I'll wait. Now, Mike, your whole point is, Will's tweet, there's So he just said the Catholic truth. And did you get up 1 Corinthians, Steph?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Would you read that, please?
Oh, sure.
He's just saying what the Bible says in 1 Corinthians.
Okay, so this is 1 Corinthians 7, 2-5. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer. But then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Which is all what Will was saying.
I don't pretend to be like the smartest guy, and I'm certainly not. But that's exactly what I took from it. And it really came out with this like super gay, spurging out hatred of sex. Right. And the feminists, which nobody should listen to anyways, but it makes no sense. That's precisely what I got from this.
I mean, it's like Will's tweet was a paraphrase of 1 Corinthians, right? I mean, it's a super gay spurging out. Now, here's the thing. There is one way, I know you know this, Mike, but there is one way, according to Pius XII, that the marital relation between man and woman is egalitarian. There's only one way. There's only one way that there's a mutual submission, man to wife, wife to man. You know what that one way is? It's not giving orders. That's only unidirectional. That's only man. Steph doesn't give me orders. I give Steph orders. And I don't give that many because I'm a laid back dude. But if I give Steph an order, she has to do it. I don't have to do what she said, right?
Word.
God gave woman to man, not man to woman, as 1 Timothy says. So. There's only one way that we're equal, and it's here in 1 Corinthians. If wife requests sex of husband, he has to give it. That's called the conjugal debt, and vice versa. Now, why is it only women, particularly Catholic women, that are wanting to deny this? I think Protestant women do this too. Other Christian women do too. There's two main reasons. Because men are pretty much, unless they're actually just gay with a beard, married to a beard. Maybe some of these dudes out there, maybe some of these overly sex-trad Puritan dudes are just gay dudes. That's really an obvious solution. I don't want to skip over that, or not gay, but SSA. And they just, I've had 6 kids and I've had sex with my wife 6 times in 50 years. Okay, you're just a gay dude. And yeah, that's good. You're same-sex attracted, and you did what you had to do 6 times to procreate with a woman. There's either that, or usually it's the woman who's treating it as if this is a unique, unidirectional order, the conjugal debt, and it's not. This is the one place, according to Pius XII, that there is a mutual submission, the conjugal debt. A man's got to give it up too. You've got to put out too. The woman's not the only one that's got to put out in marriage. But the reason we only talk about it as if it's unidirectional is because of all these touch-me-nots that probably should have become nuns or just consecrated virgins somewhere if they hate the body and hate sex so much. Like that woman who tweeted at me that she always is disgusted by sexiness. What about in the bedroom?
I have that tweet on the screen right now. She said that...
Look at these touch-me-nots. They're freaks.
She said men today are overstimulated, lustful, and dreaming of wives that are personal adult actresses. A thriving sex life... and she blurred out sex life. A thriving sex life should be nobody's goal, but to do what marriage calls for under the will of God.
Yeah, she said porn star. I'm also getting sick of the people won't say porn like it's the Dark Lord Voldemort or some shit. I just don't
like using that language myself, but dudes go for it.
I mean, they'll block out the R in porn with an at. I mean, are you guys, what are you going to start crying if I say porn? I mean, if it's one thing if it's going to get me a strike on YouTube or something, it's not going to get me a strike. It's porn. Say its name. His name is the Dark Lord Voldemort, people. The porn stuff is got to stop.
Your response to this was good. You said personal porn stars. You're just quoting her. This is the sort of anti-male crypto-feminism that has infiltrated Catholicism so badly that most brainwashed people won't even challenge your oddball assumption that a wife trying to be sexy for her husband is, quote, like a porn star, which is a diabolical inversion of the truth. These godly wives are the opposite of porn stars.
What's funny about that? Sorry, Tim, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, do it.
These women want to talk about how men are such gooners. They have themselves, with statements like this, have become gooners themselves. So like, you want to talk about men, stop gooning. Women, stop gooning. Women on Twitter, feminist Catholic women on Twitter, stop gooning. Because if that's how you view this act, then you have succumbed to the same gooning that you hate so much in the men in your lives, or the man in your life as well. It also doesn't help the fact that, unfortunately, and this is Father Ripperger that said this, that 90%, 95% of like even traditional Catholic households are feminist. Like, I don't care if a woman veils and has like 15 children. Most of these households are feminist. That's not me saying it. He said it on your show.
He said 85%, and I said, Father, it's 99. And then he goes, yeah, you're right. And so he amended that. But here's one thing I'll say. Here's one thing. This is, oh shit, I just lost it. What was it?
While
I had a
thinking
really
of that,
important
I will
thing to
just say that to be the bad guy against women on this one, women just, they resent being told that they're expected to do anything. And women, long time ago, they understood what their role was, what they're made for, what beauty and light they add to the world. Now you just bring up basic facts. Like, you're supposed to be at home, being pleasant, smiling, having sex with your husband. And like, anytime you say anything to women, it's like, I don't know how, am I some sort of porn star? It's like, no.
Oh,
what do you think was happening in the garden? Like, this, sex was around long before porn was, and that's what you're supposed to be.
That's my point. So do you know what the real definition of porn is? It's a cheap, diabolical copy of a thing that inverts its end for evil rather than good. The purpose of sexual arousal and sex is marital, procreative, unitive. Those three things we spent the first hour going through. So do you know that sex is, I'm a Catholic, okay? I'm not some weirdo sect of Calvinist Protestant. It's noble and honorable according to CCC 2362. According to Gaudium et Spes, it is noble and worthy. It's got the purpose of unitivity beginning in the Catechism of Trent, Casti Connubii, Humanae Vitae Familiaris Consortio. We have this philosophy of nature as Catholics that's Aristotelian. We don't hate the body. There's nothing dirty about sex. It's fun to talk as if it's dirty, maybe when you're doing the deed, but it's not actually wrong. Okay, so there is porn happening. Porn is an inversion of a thing's natural end, and sex is good. Okay, I don't want to sound like Christopher West. He's a fruitcake, but sex actually is a good, noble thing. That's why I just quoted that. And this lady saying that a woman, I don't know, wearing something sexy in the bedroom, or I don't know, whatever gets your go, Marge had to have Homer nibble her elbow in this instance. Whatever it is that gets people going, that's good when it's procreative, unitive, and marital. Porn is bad because it is a cheap, decontextualized, evil, inverted, subverted copy of that. She's saying it's the other way around. She's pornographizing the definition of porn. You see what I'm saying? Sex is good in its ordinary usage with those three fonts. It's only bad if you decontextualize it. She's saying that sex is bad, and it's only good if you take it out of the context of sexiness. Sexiness just means the quality of being sex. She pornographized porn. You see what she did? That's what's so evil about this weird puritanical. It's so deuced and diabolical. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You just articulated the point that I was trying to say with the goon comment, with what you just said.
Yeah.
You said it way better. That was awesome.
Steph, where's that Jose Maria Escriva point? So once we got into the blame game, and I think my friend Patrick Coffin weighed in here and was also, where's your book? Was also weirdly saying, well, I don't like the blame game. And you're buddies with this guy, I don't know who it is, Majorian on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, Majorian, yeah.
I told him I'd address on the show. He was saying, well, no, you're probably right, Tim, but I just don't like the blame game. Aren't men blaming women? Let's get back to does porn, does having lots of healthy, good sex stop men from burning? Of course it does. And I have sociological studies that prove it. Does that mean that women who deny the conjugal debt are in a way an efficient cause for it? Can they be blamed? Yes, it does. Did Saint Jose Maria, who wrote extensively on marriage, more on marriage than almost any other saint in the 19th or 20th century, you know what he said? He said that he blamed, in cases of marital infidelity, when the man cheats, specifically. You know who he blames in 80% or more of the cases for the man cheating? The woman.
She's not attractive enough or doesn't put out.
Yeah, it doesn't put out. That's the thing. So sorry, ladies. If you were looking to be like a Vestal virgin or a consecrated virgin or a nun, and you went into the married life and you were one of these, I say, crypto feminist Catholic women, like this creep who made this comment, Marian Thoughts is her anon name. It's crypto feminist because you're just a touch me not. You got into the wrong profession, lady. If you get into profession, I mean the wrong vocation of marriage. If you get into marriage, it's all about sex. Sex is the marital act. It is the greatest act of love. You're in the wrong vocation. If you don't like to touch and be touched, and I'm not trying to be gross, you've picked the wrong thing. Go be a nun. Why did you get married if you don't like the marital act?
Cruel. It's cruel to men when women enter marriage with this sort of just crappy attitude. It's just mean. It's unfeminine. Just stay single if you feel that way. That means you're defective if you have that mentality.
A good woman enjoys sex with her husband.
You will make a man miserable if you involve a man and with a crappy attitude like that. By the way, this is the quote from Saint Jose Maria. He says, "That is why I am not afraid to say that women are responsible for 80% of the infidelities of their husbands because they do not know how to win them each day and take loving and considerate care of them. A married woman's attention should be centered on her husband and children, as a married man's attention should be centered on his wife and children. Much time and effort is required to succeed in this, and anything which mitigates it is bad and should not be tolerated." And he goes on to say, because this is kind of what we're talking about, the purity spiraling. Well, what about prayer or going to church a ton? Well, he disagrees. He says there's no excuse for fulfilling this loving duty. Work outside the home is not an excuse. Not even one's life of piety can be an excuse because it is incompatible with one's daily obligations. It is not good nor pleasing to God.
Read that little rhyme he has.
He says, a married woman's first concern has to be her home. There is a Spanish saying which goes,
I love this.
If through going to church to pray, a woman burns the stew, she may be half an angel, but she's half a devil too. And he says, a saint of the Catholic Church says, I say she's a fully fledged devil.
Yeah,
so based.
Not a half a devil. So all you trad women who are just like, I have 80 devotions a day, and that takes up my time. That's more important than this dirty sex. STFU, get out. Go back to Puritanism. You know, I mean, don't really leave the faith, I guess, but leave the faith. If you're not even practicing your primary vocation, then you're not living the faith anyway. If you got married because you're a feminist, touch me not, and you hate men and you hate sex, then, you know, you should have been a nun. And because you didn't become a nun, then you're not leading the faith life. Your primary path to heaven is through your husband if you're a wife, through your wife if you're a husband. And if you hate the marital act, the main act of marriage, then there's something really, really wrong with you. And there is a lot of evidence, by the way. Now, sociology is not my bag. It's not where I turn first. But there is so much sociological evidence, studies I'm going to read to you right now, that Will was right in his tweet, that healthy marital sex life creates good of spouses and helps to avoid porneia, whether we're talking usage of porn or temptation to it or adultery or temptation to it. Absolutely. Like Jose Maria Escriva, I absolutely blame the wives in a bunch of these cases. You can, and blame can go two ways, by the way. It's like we were saying about first causes. It can go two ways.
So before you pull that up real quick, I got to hop off, but I want to say one thing. Two things. Number one, this is the perfect middle ground between the ultra Puritan, crazy trad sex stuff and the theology of the body. Not even necessarily theology of the body, but Christopher West stuff on YouTube. So Tim, you got to do this more often. There's nobody on the internet doing it. And another thing, it would be really disordered, and people would call out a man, because what does God want us to do? Primarily, he wants us to honor our state in life. So if a man that was married, if you and I said all of a sudden, I feel like God's calling me to the priesthood, that would be a fundamental dishonoring of our state in life. These women are acting no differently, except they don't get called out for it. Everybody on the internet would call a guy out. If I wanted to like go and walk away from my family to become a priest, that'd be retarded. just like these women. I don't care how many devotionals or consecrations you've done to the Blessed Virgin Mary. If you're not honoring your state in life, which includes the act itself with your husband and keeping yourself open to being in the mood, then you're dishonoring your state in life. And we just got to keep calling them out.
Yeah, like if a married guy got a divorce to go try to be a priest, which wouldn't be allowed, that would be what we'd call like hard vocational apostasy.
Yeah.
These women, all these creepy touch-me-nots that won't STFU, they all have Twitter accounts. And I've never gotten along with them as long as I've been on Twitter. There are a lot in the trad shows. There are a lot in TNT's audience. There's a lot probably tweeting about this show right now. I just never liked them. They are soft vocational
apostates.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all it is. They're not living the Christian life. The Christian life, there's a fork in the road. You can become a priest or a nun, and you are going to be, a virgin or whatever. You're going to live without sex, or you go become one of the creators of many people and create lots of people and have lots of sex. And sex is a big part of life. It's kind of the mark of the lower vocation. I'm fine saying it's a lower vocation. It's less of a challenge. It's more comfortable, but it comes up with enough of its own daily challenges to suffice. And you know what? We don't need to do what the Protestants do and make up all these rules. You don't have to pray a rosary every day to be on the team. It's good to do, but we're not Protestants. You don't get to say that. You're not on the team if you don't pray a rosary. You're not on the team if you enjoy sex with your wife. This is for Puritans who became Catholic but never became Catholic, for closeted gay men, and there are a lot of those. There are more of those in the Catholic faith than you think. And then for touch-me-not crypto-feminist women. These are the three parties that won't STFU with this sex stuff. And I don't like them. I don't like them. And they're perverting the faith. Sorry, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, that was it, man. I love what you're doing on your channel, talking about this stuff. Keep doing it. I love you guys, and I'll be praying for you.
I love you too, bro. I'll be praying for you. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll catch you soon. Let's do it again soon. And we'll get back on CMAS. All you CMAS viewers, we're going to get back to it. God willing.
Should do a show on this with Will himself.
I agree. That should be the first one back.
Yeah, that should be. Okay. We'll do it. I'll keep going. I don't like doing this topic. I do get, I'm shy as a titmouse when it comes. I giggle if I have to say tit. No, it's one thing. Look, I'm fine talking bold about the Pope, or if I like fighting, but I don't like talking about this stuff. I'm blushing because I said titmouse. You guys out there, maybe some of you guys love titmouse.
Well, that's why I think it's good that you talk about this stuff, because some guys, like, they get on there and they talk about it, they're just using all the gross terms, and it's almost like they're enjoying it too much. It's like
Christopher West, you get into these theology of the body people. I mean, look, they're all feminists. That's where they go wrong. And they like talking about the sex terms and the organ. That stuff does kind of gross me out, but they are right with a lot of it. So we're sort of a geometric mean between I'm a geometric mean between the weird touch-me-not Puritan creeps. They really are creeps on the one side, and then the theology of the body people. But I'm slightly closer to the theology of the body people because they're at least acknowledging the Catholic teaching. And again, definitive teaching came late, that CCC 2362, sex acts are noble and honorable in their ordinary form. Or if you go by Gaudium and Spes, they are noble and worthy in their ordinary form. I always say, as a pro-patriarchy guy, that why should the father as patriarch be defined by his inversion? The ordinary form of father as patriarch is good, patriarchal, for the common good of the family. But most people out there assume that the father as patriarch is his inversion, is that he's the tyrant. When we're talking about a monarch, it's good for Aristotle and St. Thomas. When we're talking about a counterintuitive version of a monarch, a tyrant, that's one that's subverted the purpose and inverted the purpose. But when I say monarch, you should think monarch. You shouldn't think tyrant. That's perverse. When I say patriarch, you should think patriarch, not an abusive father. That's perverse that I say patriarch and you think perverted father. When I say procreative marital unitive sex, you should think that's good, a noble and a worthy thing. Cool. You shouldn't think that's dirty and perverted. Well, that's because you've been brainwashed by all these creeps and goons and cretins on Catholic Twitter. That that shows it's the same thing as you hear patriarch and you think an abusive father. You're just brainwashed. You just brainwashed people, and that's why you need this show. Subscribe to the channel, by the way. We're trying to hit 100,000 subs.
Let's do it.
And we're trying to stay going.
We have a lot of super chats, so would you like to get to that now?
Yeah, though I do want to read. Let's get to the super chats. I do want to read all the sociological evidence that absolutely backs up from yet another angle that Will's tweet was right and everything we're saying about sex is right. You don't go sociology first. You go philosophy, theology, philosophy of nature specifically. Sort of facts of history, church history, which is why I read all of the, Casti Connubii, Humanae Vitae, Familiaris Consortio, Council of Trent, Modern Catechism, Gaudium et Spes. And then we'll sprinkle in some sociology, some studies which have shown, yes, if a wife is such a rotten Catholic that she denies the conjugal act to her husband, well, she's a rotten Catholic. She's a rotten woman. And literally, that's a mortal sin. And it's a mortal sin for a husband to deny it too, but we don't talk about that because husbands don't deny it typically. But if she does that, then it does partly heighten the temptation to porneia, to whether cheat or have use of porn. All right, let's get some of those super chats in here, and I'll sprinkle on the sociology as we go.
Jim Pine said, "Happy Friday. Glad you chimed in on this."
Thanks. I'll always defend my brother Will Nolan because he's right, and the people that are critiquing him are morons.
Jesus Rodrigo GK said, "Priest at confession said premarital was okay with girlfriend."
Who said that?
I said a super chat that said a priest at confession told him that premarital was okay with his girlfriend.
That's hilarious. I mean, if only, right? I mean, I'd be for it. It's not true. It's not true. It can't be true. Will never be true. Blah, blah, blah. But I mean, hey, if the rule,
just make gluttony okay. And, we'll eat 3 cakes. If only we could just start eating whatever the hell we wanted to.
If God were for, or had been for, he's not going to change it now. But if he had been for giving us a less rigorous moral law, then great. I'm all for it. I'm all for grading on a curve, but he didn't. That would have been cool. The more stuff you're allowed to look, this is my guiding principle. The more stuff you're allowed to do. I don't just mean sex stuff. I just mean the more pizza you're allowed. I love pizza. I love steak. The more pizza and steak I'm allowed to eat without being a glutton or getting fat, I'm all for it. But it's not that much. For me, I used to, when I was a teenager, a growing boy, I could have, half to whole pizza because my body needed the calorie. But then I'd have 3 pieces. Now I'm like, I'll have 2 pieces, and I don't really need more than that. I feel like a glutton if I have more than that, unless I'm really hungry or something. But yeah, I mean, if God wired nature in a way where you're allowed to eat more pizza before you get fat or you become a glutton, then I'm all for it. Or you can have a steak every night or whatever without getting plaque in your veins, becoming a glutton that way. Then I love permissivity, but I'm also a realist. I'm just saying what I hate are these losers who are not really Catholic, who make shit up ad hoc, ad extra, and they pretend they're Catholic, and they're making the rules stricter than they really are. And they're not real rules. They're pseudo rules. They're fake rules. They're losers. They're LARPs. I want them out of the faith. I'm sick of them.
Well, they scare people too from
lies
things that they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
I met somebody who literally thought that they had to do a rosary every day. It's like, no, that's not the rule.
That's not the rule.
I'm not saying people who do that are wrong. I'm just saying don't make your thing everybody's thing unless it's the church says, no, this must be your thing.
Yeah.
It discourages people. Just say what the rules are.
The church gives us precepts of the faith. The 5 things that you have to do. They're called the precepts, right? If you had to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, well, that's a precept of Islam. It's not a precept of Roman Catholicism. Okay,
doing Catholicism well is hard enough as it is. We don't have to make it harder.
We don't need extra rules from loveless, joyless, lifeless losers who don't have fun. Okay, I don't need that. I'll follow, because I want to go to heaven. I will follow every real rule, strict or lenient, that God, through Jesus, through the apostles laid out for me. I will do it. I will fast every day I have to fast. But if you lessen the rules, I'm gonna say cool. If the bishops give a little dispensation from fasting on St. Patty's Day, I'll usually take it, because I do observe fasting and stuff the rest of the time. I don't know. Speaking
of which, you should do a show this next week about how Halloween is awesome. How
I've done so many
one
of
those things. No, but Halloween is a day that we get together and we honor monsters, and we're not mad at each other. Like, it is a great holiday. We love it. And yes, our kids dress up as ghosts. They do not dress up as saints. They dress up as ghosts and goblins, like normal people on Halloween.
Well, it's called the Hallowtide, right? Pope Gregory moved it from spring to fall to coincide with all the spooky autumnal fests that even the pagans use. Pope Gregory moved it intentionally. It's a Triduum. It's the Hallowtide. It's All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, All Souls Day, and it's supposed to be spooky. It is the primary memento mori day. That's why you dress up like zombies or mummies or corpses or Frankensteins or Draculas, because it's a day where we're remembering our death. We're supposed to be spooked out. Again, a lot of these same Puritan losers are like, well, we dress up like the saints. Well, do that on whatever, All Saints Day. On All Hallows Eve, you dress up like something spooky. The way Pope Gregory, who codified Halloween as October the 31st, did so, and he said it's called the Hallowtide, and it's a fall Triduum. It is the memento mori holiday. We're supposed to dress up like dead people then. I'm so sick of the killjoys out there.
I know.
People know. But I'm not going to do I don't know if I'll do a whole
People ask
Halloween.
us all the time, they're like, did your kids dress up as saints for Halloween? I'm like,
no.
Obviously not.
Why would they do that? And yeah, if you go to a All Saints Day party, for one thing, it sounds boring and loserish. To dress, I don't want to dress up. Sometimes I've dressed up as Pope Pius X on Halloween, but that was only to be funny. But no, our kids, I always insist, dress as something scary.
Absolutely, 100%.
Don't dress as something slutty, gals. That's not cool. It's a day to honor monsters
and death.
Thank
Thank you, Tim Gordon. Okay, so wife recently had a miscarriage and is now fearful of becoming pregnant again. The abstinence now in our marriage is really challenging and creating tension. She's blaming herself for this. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, look at what St. Paul says in another place in the Bible. It's not 1 Corinthians, If you have to be abstinent for a time, it's going to create temptation. I forget what passage this is, but come together again after not too long, he says. There are times in marriage where you have to be abstinent. I get it. It does create tension. You're less close. Because, I just read you all of the Catholic teaching on it. You're more close when you're having sex a lot. It's something you do alone with each other. It is the marital act. You don't do this with your next closest friends, with your ancestors you don't have sex with your relatives, with your, obviously not with your children. All the other people you're close with, you don't do this with. Yet you laugh and make jokes with your spouse like you do with all of them. You watch movies with your spouse, but you do this extra, more important thing that creates unitivity with you. So when you have to be abstinent, it makes the marriage less strong, which was Will's other point.
And to give your wife encouragement, I would remind her that this is the beauty of femininity, is that we think about Our Lady, how much suffering and pain and torture she went through, even just with her one son. So this is one of the things that women, we feel that. We feel that through labor, when we lose children, when we have miscarriages. This is what being a woman is. But there is beauty in that suffering and giving of your body and sometimes your life and your heart to these sorts of truly tragic situations. But that's the beauty of femininity. So just be open to God's will. If God wants you to suffer in this way, you will suffer in that way. But what's most beautiful is the openness to that, being open to life. And I can promise you, because we've had, our first daughter was born with horrible health issues. Thinking about Kennedy Hall today, whose wife is giving birth to a child that they don't think is going to survive very long.
We pray for Kennedy's family and Kennedy's little baby.
This is like the sword piercing your heart for women, is that with the beauty of labor and childbearing, you're gonna have these swords pierce your heart. But those swords are beautiful. There's meaningfulness there, and just be open to God's will.
Just for the retards out there that are still not sure whether or not an evil woman who deny, I don't mean, after a miscarriage, I'm not addressing the last super chatter, but an evil woman who regularly, for extended periods of time, or I mean, without just cause, denies the conjugal act, which is a mortal sin. For the retards that don't think that this creates real hardship and real temptation to some form of porneia for the man, here's some sociology. There's a 2012 study. It studied 617 couples, showed pornography use negatively associated with sexual quality. So diminished sex quality between the man and his wife for the man if he used porn. So it was bad for sex quality. I forget what I need to prove to any of these people that are trying not to get it. Here's a 2016 study, longitudinal data, that proved that viewing pornography reduces marital quality over time. Oh, wait, I forget what we're trying to prove to who. Married persons who viewed pornography more frequently reported significantly lower levels of marital quality. So this is going the other way. I guess Catholics wouldn't have a problem with this, but the other thing is as much an article of common sense that if men will be more tempted to porneia or adultery if the wife stops having sex with them. Will Nolan, by the way, coaches a lot of sexless marriages. Can you believe this is a thing? It's a really common thing.
I can now
because
after
of all
seeing
these,
Catholic Twitter.
Yeah. You see all of these heinous bitches on Catholic Twitter. Just the touch me nots, the feminists. We work with them, not necessarily the heinous ones, but we work with couples that are really hearing the pernicious influence of all these really, really, really evil ladies that are denying their husbands and treating their husbands horribly. And it's shocking. I didn't know it was such a thing until I wrote Case for Patriarchy. Steph and I wrote together Leave and Cleave. She wrote Ask Your Husband. We didn't realize this was such a thing, the sexless marriage, and Will showed us a lot of the statistics and the stuff he's come to. So there's a 2017 study showing that pornography and divorce are cross-associated. It's no shocker, right? I can't remember what the idiot Catholics out there that try not to get it deny. They hate porn, so they'll say it causes divorce. But also the things that cause divorce, like sexless marriage or women denying their husbands conjugal rights, causes temptation to porn. Here's a 2021 study surveying 240 couples. This one's, I think, more on point. I forget which ones I'm trying to even prove here. Associations between pornography use and sexual dynamics among heterosexual couples. Male pornography use was associated with lower male sexual satisfaction, which we already said, indirectly associated with both partners.
It's the role of the wife, by the way, to make your husband's life easier, right? To be there for him, not just in a sexual sense, but that's what you're doing at home all the time. You're making his day pleasant. You're helping him with the tasks that he needs. You're providing him with the stability of having the helpmeet in the home, having his meals made. Think about that also with the sex act, like that. You are helping him, to remain chaste. And I know a lot of women, they have a very hard time hearing that. But I remember that's one of the reasons why my book got canceled, is because I told women that they have to have sex with their husbands when they ask for it.
I thought that was the reason.
Yes.
See, this is another thing that touches on our kind of, public interactions
I was like
with
one
the
of the
Catholic
first
public.
ones to say it to girls, and they flipped out.
In Steph's book, Ask Your Husband, she's like, look, one of the main parts about being a good wife is not just having sex with your husband, but getting to a place where you enjoy it. It's natural. It's good. It shouldn't just be you do it as a duty.
Right.
And the ladies flip their shit.
Yeah, I was like, guys, girls, it's not that hard if you need to, like, if your husband's like wanting to, and again, I'm not trying to be body or gross, but if your husband's in the mood, it's not that hard to get there with him. You know, it's just not. And all this crap about headaches and all these other things, you know what you do if that's the case? You take an aspirin and you tell your husband, I need a rain check for 45 minutes until this aspirin kicks in. This is not an indefinite postponement for whenever you just feel like it.
Yeah,
and it's up to you, the woman,
it's
to
like
bring
a
it up with
postponement
him.
of 30 minutes. And in the meanwhile, you're like, now, while I'm laying down, having a mini cup of coffee with an aspirin, what outfit can I wear for you? Or what can, no, I'm serious. I'm serious. You don't,
I agree. I'm just laughing.
literally, like, then, or like, let's have a conversation to get things started. You know, you know, let's get
So
the preparatory work, get the kids up in their beds. You know, you could be prepping and everybody's excited. Okay, it's going to be a good night. That's, yeah, I get headaches too.
Everybody does. It takes 30 to 40 minutes for an aspirin to kick in. And these broads are like, they'll just kick that can down the road.
The heinous biatches who say, no, I have a headache. It's like, okay, did you take an aspirin? Like, well, yeah, I just did. So they're never up for range. Morons never, like Holden Caulfield says, never want to discuss anything. Morons never pretend that chronology is a thing. It's like, all right, I'll see you in 25 minutes. Like nude in the bedroom. You know what I mean? But they don't do that. And if it's a really, I'm thinking of Cornbread Maxwell talking about a headache he couldn't shake.
Right.
The Boston Celtic. Okay, if it's one that lasts all night, just be like, okay, this is not going away. It's a rare, unshakable like migraine. But like, what does the wife say to the husband then? Is it cool? Because this is a really bad one. If we wait till morning, like, let me have an 7 hour sleep and I'll rock your world in the morning.
Well, I always tell women, but
they don't do that. The bad women don't do that. They're just like, I have a headache. And then a month later, it's like, so how many times have you had sex this month? And they're like, 0. I had that headache that one time 29 days ago. What? And the husbands are such cucks and have been so cuckolded that they're not like, hey, you had the headache 20 minutes ago. Let's go.
And I tell women too, because they'll always, and I know women are doing this right now in their heads. They're like, well, what if she's lost her legs in a hunting accident or something? I always tell women, if there's a situation where it's a prolonged abstinence is needed, you know, you have a terrible headache for 24 hours, let's say you had a surgery or whatever, like, fair enough. But you go get your husband, like, the second that you're well and ready to do this with him. Like, it shouldn't be up to him. It's so disrespectful and unfeminine and just mean to your husband for him to always be in the position of having to ask you, are you ready? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? It's up to you as an adult to come to your husband and say, you know what? Thank you for being patient. You know, my headache actually subsided. Or, hey, thanks for bearing with me. Like, I know this has been a crazy time with a difficult pregnancy or whatever, but I'm actually ready now for the marital act. Like, you go get him.
Or more than just, you know, brace yourself, Effie, like what Mrs. Doubtfire says her husband's idea of foreplay was. Not just I'm ready, okay, I prepared myself, I braced myself. How about like, yeah, I got frisky, okay? That's be an adult. This is one of these grow up things where like these touch me not frigid ice cube women that are just using Christianity as some sort of safe harbor for their weird Freudian psychology, you know, their daddy issues, you know, or whatever. They're afraid of being an adult human female. Being an adult human, it involves, unless you're a priest or a nun, sexuality. The touch-me-nots are usually bad. They're bad people. They're bad at the vocation. They're bad at Christianity. Let's call it what it is. They're not holier. They're bad wives, or if there's a man like this, they're bad husbands, or just closeted gays, you know? So that's that. We're calling things what they are. Let's get to super chats.
So, if your wife is absolutely unable to conceive, should the couple practice abstinence, or is it permissible to engage in the marital act regularly?
Yes, it's permissible. Well, why is she unable to conceive? Just biologic, 100%. The act. I mean, this would have been something I'd have looked into a long time ago. Yes, if each individual act is open to life. Even if one of you is, now it's different if one of you has sterilized yourself. If one of you has sterilized yourself, one or both of you, you're not allowed to have sex, right? So if she's tied her tubes, if that's what you're talking about.
Or if he got neutered.
Or if he neutered himself, if he chopped him off, or whatever these guys called, he got the snip, you're not allowed to have sex until you reverse that. So that yes, if a woman is unable to conceive or a woman's gone through menopause, you think, are you joking, man? You think that like a 45-year-old woman, 48-year-old woman goes through menopause and she's never going to have sex with her husband again? No, the act has to be open to life. That means you do not artificially contracept. There's not a condom or a whatever, the female diaphragm or chemical pill contraception. It means you avoid that. Doesn't mean because a woman has gone through menopause or maybe was never able to conceive that you can't have sex. Holy cow, man.
Next super chat. What does the church teach concerning spouses who engage in the marital act when the wife is already pregnant? Can their intent still satisfy the procreative element of the act?
Okay. Yes, of course. It's open to, you must be open to life. Okay. That does not mean openness to the procreative powers. Okay. So I know there's secondary powers, primary powers, first potency, second potency. So you check the box of procreative. An act is procreative if you have sex and it is terminal in the right place. And yes, even if she's pregnant, then you have not blocked the procreative powers, meaning you haven't blocked the union, the possibility of the union of sperm and egg. But what if she's already pregnant? Not relevant. If she's already pregnant, I'm just surprised people are only asking this now. Like, have you been erring on the side of like, yeah, we just never have sex when my wife's pregnant? That's 9 months, brother. Like, yeah, that's not natural. It's not, you're not supposed to be going 9 months in marriage without, there's all this sociological data. You get less close. The good of the spouses is basically on hold. The good of the relationship's on hold. If one of you becomes a quadriplegic, that's a different story. You do what you have to do, but that's not natural. That's not ordinary. It's ordinary to be getting pregnant, right? We have lots of kids around here. It is not ordinary to be going 9 months without having sex, and it's not required. It is the procreative powers are available as long as your sperm can reach her egg. Theoretically, you don't know that your sperm reaches the egg of the woman each time with each procreative act. Again, we're not trying to be gross. As long as the sperm can reach the egg, it doesn't matter whether or not she gets pregnant or you're hoping to get pregnant or trying to get pregnant. As long as you leave it open, you are checking that box. And yes, you're supposed to be having sex.
Cameron Richter's had sorry, I hope I'm saying his last name right, had a really good point. He said, after talking with dozens of married men struggling with porn, wives who deny their husbands are a huge cause of this.
Yes, it's obvious.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, it's like, that's why it's so surprising to me that Will got the flack that he got. It is so obvious.
I am continually, and this has been a linear progression of disappointment over the 7 years I've been on the internet, starting with being on TNT. I just can't believe how lame Catholics are. That's the thing. I can't believe how many Catholics are. Such a large percentage are just leading these lives of quiet desperation. Whether it's weird made up Catholic doctrine that you can't go to the Novus Ordo or you can't go to the Latin Mass, right? And people will travel 5 hours each Sunday to go to the Latin Mass. Look, what? No, I'm a Latin Mass supremacist, but yeah, I'm not going, just these weird lives to satisfy made up rules that you made up. It's weird. Or people make up rules. They can't have sex with their spouses or can't enjoy sex with their spouses or can't enjoy foreplay. We'll do foreplay next week. There are some rules. You have to follow the rules. Or these Catholics that make up, you can't read Harry Potter, or you can't, I'm not even saying it's good. I'm just saying you can't observe Halloween, or you can't read Lord of the Rings, or they just make stuff up. The state of Catholics, the one true faith, we have the truth. The Orthodox don't, the Protestants don't. We have the full truth. And Catholics, not all of us, there's some parish orphan retrogrades out there that are my kind of people, but just steal defeat from the jaws of victory. Just make shit up. Well, I have a beautiful wife and I'm attracted to her, but I know it would be a sin if I had sex with her. Where did you guys get this? I have a beautiful wife. We love each other, but I don't have sex with her while she's pregnant. Why? What are you thinking? Well, part of it's because you pay too much attention to morons who just say things on Twitter to have people listen to them. It's diabolic.
So local show after this one.
Yeah, I'll prefigure some of the next week's show on foreplay, I guess, on locals. Again, Mike's saying like, oh, I have a unique voice. I can do it. I cut through the BS. You know, that's true. I blush when I say titmouse. So I don't love the topic, but you know, I guess people need to hear me say it because everyone else is scared to do it. Everyone else is scared to do it because the Puritans freak out if you say the truth, which is weird. It's a weird thing. It's a weird time. It's a good time because we get to go to heaven, maybe if we live in the sacraments. But it's a weird time to be Catholic. There are a lot of Catholic weirdos. I'm just being honest.
Somebody said on last super chat here, but purity spiraling makes me feel special.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It makes weird touch-me-nots and closeted gays and Puritan Catholics feel special.
You know what it is? It's like what we had when we first started talking about feminism, which was true. And you like busted onto the scene. You're like, this actually, everyone's wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. I think everyone's just looking for that sort of high to chase, but with things like made up rules. Like that was fun because we're like, no, we can point to scripture. We can point to church fathers. We can point to the popes. We can point to like just like a ton of sources to prove that everyone's wrong on feminism. But now it's like, ever since then, it's like it's been hard to chase a high like that.
Yeah. Well, most people, I guess, Catholics included, are wrong on sex. So I guess we're chasing that high. That's a good point. It's just weird, but it's related to the feminism thing because of all these heinous, nasty women who I guess are running around calling themselves Catholics and trad Catholics. A good wife wants to make her husband happy. That's just what she wants to do.
That's what she was created for.
She's created to make him happy and comfortable. And wow, yeah, I just can't believe what bad lives Catholics are leading a lot of times. You know, we have everything we need to have a good life and to enjoy our lives and to be holy at the same time. And Catholics just try hard to spoil that. I don't get it.
Look for the League locals and monthly supporters on YouTube and Subscribestar. I will post the link to join us on the live stream right after this one. We're going to try something a little new today where you can hopefully interact with Tim beyond chat. We'll see if it works. So look for that link.
Cool. God bless you all. Sorry if I was a little crusty today. Not really. I'm not usually crusty, though. I just can't believe the lives of quiet desperation many Catholic men are out there leading, like willfully, like Henry David Thoreau said. You look into people's lives and they're leading these lives of quiet desperation and they're crippling themselves. They're hobbling themselves for no reason. Don't do this. I want you guys to lead your best life, be your best self. For a lay person, for a layman, you know, having a good married sex life is a big part of that. So that's what I want for you guys. Desvolt.